Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast, the podcast that Flannery O'Connor and Fyodor Dostoevsky listened to while drinking tea in heaven. Welcome, Laura Heeman.
Thank you, Clark Massey.
All right, what we have for you today is we have some interesting thoughts from the Libertarian candidate for president, Dave Smith. We're finding that the Libertarian Party and the Catholic Church are weirdly becoming in the same situation. We're going to talk about absurdism and how everyone's getting gaslit and you don't have to go along with it. And then we're going to have our, little segment at the end on our simple living. Has to do with child labor this week.
Yep.
I'll introduce the subject and Laura hop in here.
All right. So
Dave Smith is a stand-up comedian, and he's been kind of leading a takeover of the Libertarian Party. He seems to be mostly for the good. We're not doing this discussion because we're libertarians at all or have ideas that we want to promote that at all. But Dave's thoughts on his own party's situation is very interesting. They basically have a situation where they have a messaging problem. They have an influence and power problem. And they have internal problems. And I think the church is more and more looking like the Libertarian Party in the sense of if you took a real big flyover history of the church, we have this early church period with the great evangelization where we were the minority, held no power, didn't really worry about having a governmental view or a view of how to wield power. It was just Christianity at its kind of most essence, and it spread like wildfire. Then we have this period where Christianity kind of becomes the establishment, and it becomes, in a sense, after at least the fall of Rome, it becomes the establishment in Western Europe. It's like a single party system and it's all Christian, right? Yeah. You can quibble on this, on paganism, things like this, but I don't think that's what matters. It becomes we're not really debating another system. We're kind of running a country the way communism would or whatever, where it's there's really no choice. It's just going to be Catholic. How do we do it? Then we get the period where Protestantism hits the scene, and it's almost like a Republicans, Democrats. It's like a two-party system, but the two parties are actually very close. Yeah. They have almost all the same beliefs, but there are these differences, and it seems like everything in the world depends on these small differences. Yeah. And then somehow this two-party situation is fading away, and we get the rise of secularism, and we get this idea, this great feeling that Nietzsche identifies as God is dead. Right? And now we're getting to the point that Catholicism is not in charge. It's not a Catholic versus Protestant problem. We're a minority in the population, a very dedicated minority. Yeah. Right? So that's the same problem as the Libertarian Party. How do you take this dedicated minority and actually get your ends? Right. So we'll try to characterize how the libertarians are thinking about it. So I think the libertarians are probably about 5% of the population. Yeah. They can get 2 to 3, sometimes even 5% of the vote in any given election. But there's probably a lot of other people who more or less share their beliefs who are voting for the big candidates because they don't see it as fruitful to vote for the libertarian candidate. Yeah. I don't think they get quite 5%, but they're getting a few. Right. It'd be rare. It'd be the rare election where they did better, as good as 5. Right. And the point here is that most elections are decided by less than 5%. So if you could somehow go to each candidate and say, hey, look, here's what we want. And for that, we will throw our weight behind you. They could get a lot more done for their cause. Yeah. For increasing liberty as they want it. Yeah. Than what they're by just running a candidate. Yes. Right. So that's an issue. Another issue is that almost every time they address a political question, their ideas are kind of out of frame. Yeah. Right. Like if somebody says, here's the debate we're going to have, do we fund Ukraine this much or this much? And they're like, we want a non-interventionist foreign policy. And it's what do you do with that guy? Wait, what? Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the Catholics have a similar problem. A lot of our ideas at this point are kind of out of frame, out of what most people are even considering. Right. Yeah. And Dave Smith has kind of said that he has 2 jobs. When he speaks to the general public, his job is to red pill them. And when he speaks to his own people in the Libertarian Party, his job is to make them not be so autistic.
Yeah.
So let's try to explain this. Or do you want to explain, which one do you want to take?
I don't know. Well, I guess let's start. I think probably a lot of our listeners know what red pill is, right? But red pill, same as this phrase you were just using, breaking frame, right?
Right. It means kind of like saying that the way this whole problem has been put on the table is incorrect. Like, we need to like start all the way over. Like, there's ideas completely unimaginable here.
Right? There's false assumptions. There's incorrect facts. Maybe the means by which you've understood this problem are faulty. Like,
so like a Catholic believes that the devil is real and the devil's messing with us and messing even with our politics sometimes. But if you walk into a sociology meeting and you say, but what about the devil?
Yeah.
You're outside of their frame. Right. And it's interesting because so many of our ideas as Catholics are totally a different frame. Like this idea of the spiritual. Yeah. Most people believe in the spiritual, even though when they talk about themselves in psychotherapy, they might talk about themselves as completely material. Yeah. If you still just survey people, they widely believe in the spiritual. Yeah. Right.
So, and I think it's like, there's like a reality outside the discussion, and I think like politically for a lot of people, like red pill moments have come with like, realizing the media has not been straightforward,
Right. Like realizing that there's propaganda that they've been consuming that hasn't been true journalism.
Yeah. Or other interests at play or whatever,
right. Special interests. Right. Mm-hmm. So the thing with the red pilling is like, if the libertarian or the Catholic is involved in the debate, you're not actually trying to win the debate. You're just merely trying to get the audience to realize there's way more at play here than what we're discussing. Yeah. It's almost impossible to win the debate. You just want to leave the debate with everyone doubting the two sides that framed it. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think that's what we need to do. In a sense, to help the world, we have to continually be breaking frame and making room for God. Yeah. Making room for the spiritual, making room for real love. Yeah. Right. And I don't mean real love, even like in the sense of like marriage love. I mean like supernatural love. Because when love is merely natural, when it's merely the chemical reactions of, biological beasts, it's just not real. It's not worth dying for. It's not. Yeah. It's gutted. It's empty. So like we somehow need to like always be like, we need to be the person who's kind of more sane than everyone else and saying that thing that sounds a little crazy. Yeah. Outside the frame. Yeah. And the people who are hungry will then come to us looking for more. Right. They'll say, yes, I agree. There's something wrong with the whole way this has been presented. Tell me more. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I think this is a thing we have in our manual. It's like sometimes like a successful ministry visit can just look like leaving somebody saying like, you see something I don't see, and even that observation can be very powerful, Right. Which means we have to restrain ourselves a little bit. We don't want to like try to win the whole argument right there. Right. Particularly when like the groundwork is not in your favor. Like I think we've talked before on this podcast, and we talk about this at Simpleton training, that like if you're in an argument with someone who's like an atheist and they want to just find a flaw in Catholicism, you're kind of in an impossible argument. Right. Because they can poke at any teaching, anything in history, and they have no ground to defend themselves. And as soon as you start a long explanation of a tortured subject, they've already shifted their objection to Catholicism. Right. Yep. So it's like there's no point in like having that conversation on those terms. Yeah. Right. There is a point in leaving them wondering if there's more and like kind of hinting that there's a red pill there. Yeah. Those terms they're also not like meaningful, if you don't have the kind of bigger picture, it's like you want to argue about a moral thing, in church teaching or whatever. And it's just going to seem like a rule, it's just going to seem like a rule until you have this like bigger picture of like, there's a God who loves me and wants my happiness, like
like you were saying, it just doesn't make sense to go into that argument so much and win that argument.
So let's talk about some of the things that Catholics are believing right now that are completely outside of frame, right? Like one idea would just be like, hey, we believe that there's angels and devils walking around everywhere. But I don't know that that's the most useful break of frame you want to make right now. But
I actually wish people would get into that break of frame more, because I think like people would laugh at that idea. But if you push like, hey, do you ever feel like you walk in a room and there's like bad vibes around, people would be like, yes. And what is that, But anyway, so that's an example.
Well, there's also this idea that the supernatural is real and the spiritual is real. Just like hinting that that's even a possibility. Like, for example, you can talk about addiction. You can talk about despair / depression all day long as merely a chemical medical reality.
Yeah.
It's also a spiritual reality.
Yeah.
It both has spiritual causes and there are also spiritual solutions.
Yeah.
Yep. And that is like a taboo thing to even say that right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Another idea is that just like starting to talk about things as virtue and sin is a little bit taboo, but actually explains reality better than a lot of the ways we talk about it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about the natural law, that there could be like things just built into reality that make a lot of the Catholic teachings true.
Yeah.
That these teachings are like self-enforcing.
And life-giving and like a road to happiness,
Right.
I think.
And that sin is against the natural law almost always.
Yeah.
And always has consequences you can't even predict that are just going to ruin your happiness.
Yep.
Yeah. I think sacrifice and responsibility is something deeply in Catholicism that people are afraid to talk about.
Yeah, people are afraid to talk about. It's also counter the current message of like needing to take care of yourself, and people do need to take care of themselves. But there's just a lot of focus on like, taking care of yourself right now and making sure you get what you need and making things fair, Yeah,
I'm always worried when people talk about self-care.
Yeah, no, right. Even though
like,
I believe people need self-care.
Yeah. There's some truth in there, but it's also, there's a lot of lies in there too.
There's a lot of lies.
Somehow it's not a good way to address reality. I think perhaps the biggest like red pill that we need to hint there's something way more on is I hear people talk about like the problem of lack of purpose, the problem of lack of meaning all the time.
Yeah.
There really is no purpose and meaning in nihilism. In a sense, like our culture's left purpose and meaning behind, but they're always believing they can somehow discover it in either like enjoying their job or working for a great cause, like ending global warming. And none of these causes and no job is ever enough to give a person a reason to live, a true meaning to life and a true purpose in life.
Yeah.
The closest worldly thing you could get would just be family.
Yeah.
But even that, suicide is like an epidemic and it's something we don't want to talk about, and that's a direct consequence of lack of purpose and meaning,
And we see it in families, parents, Yeah.
And what we're saying right now is very controversial, right? But it's very Catholic and it's actually not even that. It's only profound if you're in denial. It's pretty basic reality,
Yeah.
So what is our job? As Catholics trying to red pill the world, I think what we're trying to do is create space for God and like create that for him. So it's like, there's this sense in which God is dead that Nietzsche recognized. That's like this, like God is an antique. God was been, supplanted. God is not necessary. And bravely forge ahead in your nihilism and figure out your own meaning, right? And figure out some other greater purpose there, right? And all that's just fraud.
Yeah.
Right? So somehow we have to like our main job as Catholics when we're talking in groups, when we're doing that kind of like, in a sense, this is like the initial missionary work. This is the sowing of the seeds, right?
Yeah.
This red pilling that we're trying to do, this breaking of frame.
Yeah.
Just make space for God.
Yeah. My brother talks about how my brother works in the church, and like when he'd worked with youth groups before, he would talk about, like just an easy way in was like, how you feel like there's like something missing in your life, and all the high schoolers would be like, yes,
Right.
And he moved into this like very wealthy parish, and he tried this like saying like, how you feel like there's something missing in your life, and it was like it's like a extremely wealthy area, and they were all like, no.
That's good.
Like we have everything. And so, but then it was like he had this new job of being like, something's missing in your life, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
They will realize it, but
what we've
absolutely done, so the way you escape God is either through intoxication or distraction.
Yeah.
And we have so much today to keep you distracted, and people can even pursue it. I'm convinced this is why people pursue busy places,
Oh, yeah, interesting.
That like I was thinking about this week, that like if you have a restaurant, 2 restaurants, exact same quality of food, right? One has long lines and is always busy, and the other one, you're one of the only people in there. And you're going to get better service, more privacy, not hurried out if you're the only one in there. But people will somehow think that other one with the long line's better, and somehow it's like the energy. But it's also just the distraction and the little struggle of it, that makes it somehow better.
Oh, I think people also like to see and be seen, but
there's a little bit of that. I was kind of doing this because I went to this gym where there's only like 10 people in this huge community center at any one time. So you kind of feel like I have this to myself.
Yeah.
Like everything in this place I have to myself. If I'm going to run on the track, I'll be the person running on the track. Yeah. And so it's like, isn't that better? But I can totally see why people would think it's so lame too, Yeah,
but the other gym has like a buzz. Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a distraction thing, but it's like, I think that's a community thing. But
I think Pascal, the saintly heretic, was saying he didn't call it distraction. He called it agitation. That like agitation is what keeps you away from God. And I think it's kind of the same thing, but I think that's a better word for what I'm talking about with the restaurant and stuff. It's like people are seeking that agitation to keep them from kind of coming to terms with the base reality. It's why monasteries are the unagitation centers. You know what I mean? Like they're there to take all that away so that you almost have to come to terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all right. So when you speak in public, when you're with people who don't believe at all, I think your goal is not to win the argument. Your goal is not to argue them around. Your goal is not to it's to create doubt. Yeah. Doubt that maybe this is all there is. Yeah. Yeah. That there could be something quite more that provides a much more powerful meaning. Yeah. You're kind of in a way that's almost like inviting them on a spirit quest. Yeah. Daring them that there could be more if they want to go look. And they may not be ready to look, but that dare may stick. Yeah. So now let's talk about the other thing you said, and we'll have to come up with a better word for it. So I've noticed, like in dealing with young people over the last 20 years, that young people today love to talk about their problems and weaknesses. It's almost a badge. It's like you want to come out of a prestigious college and be somewhat OCD and have this problem and in therapy and have this problem and tell everyone. You're not hiding it. You're not hiding your weakness. Right.
This is like what I was just telling you about. There's a jiu-jitsu fighter right now who's like top of the chain. He's dominating, and it's like all his trophy acceptance speeches are like, I'm depressed and this is just so wonderful that I could do this, and it's like such a weird thing,
Are you depressed or is it wonderful?
Yeah, it's just it's like his acceptance speeches are all like, let me tell you all the things that are wrong with me so I can enjoy this victory. I'm a nerd. Right. And I don't know. It's interesting. I bring this up because it's just like the juxtaposition shows how absurd it is, like he's like top of the game fighter, like he can kick ass.
Yeah. Also someone who's highly motivated, because depression is supposed to rob you of motivation. Yeah. Here's a guy who trains all the time and gets out of bed.
Well, I think sometimes if it's like in the form of anxiety, it can actually make people highly motivated, right? Because it's
but I don't think that's what used to be in the medical books as depression.
I think this is like another understanding of depression is like anxiety is the flip side.
I know, but they're part of the reason they're expanding all these understandings of the disease is to medicalize them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's somehow expanding the like scope of the medical explanation. I'm not really against it. I guess if he's sad, he's sad, you know,
right.
But it's not debilitating because he's a high achiever.
Right. Yeah. And I don't want to argue about whether he's like, about whether he's depressed or not. Right. It's not debilitating. Yeah. Cause he's a high achiever. Right. But what is the need to discuss this like publicly? And
we say that knowing people who are so depressed, they never go outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's a very different disease than what this guy's struggling with.
Or I'm talking, or leave their bedrooms, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's like
once you know those people, someone who's winning national championships saying they're depressed is just
like
weird.
Champion.
It's like this is just a different thing.
Yeah.
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 And that's by the way that is pointing out what we were going to say though. So when Dave Smith says I have to keep my libertarians from being so autistic, he's using the word in a funny way. He kind of means. Yeah. I have to keep all my libertarians from not nerding out all the time and alienating everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what he means by that is I've actually been to libertarian meetings and been to the Libertarian Convention before. And what's going on there, and this is all 20 years ago, back in my college days, right? But like what goes on there is they want to get in these debates about like privatizing police forces and privatizing roads and things like this. And it's like, this has nothing to do with what was possible or probable in our moment in history.
Yeah.
This is not useful for pushing the ball down the field towards liberty, right? In fact, because you are sitting at a convention debating it, you have in a sense torpedoed your own cause because you're wasting all your time on it. You're nerding out on something. And there's this weird satisfaction being in a group of nerds, like trying to get ideological purity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is what we Catholics are doing right now. This is a big temptation we have right now. Instead of engaging the world and bringing Christ and making it more real, we're nerding out.
Yeah. About minutia. Like
minutia. Right.
Yeah.
And we're also like kind of like wanting it to like, you know, wanting it kind of to fit the stuff we want to read, you know, like we want to read about the Protestants versus the Catholics, or we want to think there's some principled atheist who's really well thought out there who we can argue with. I tell you what, any principled atheist who wants to argue with Catholics all the time is already believes in God more than the real huge mass of humanity that needs to learn about Jesus right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's like you want to argue about minutia like it's like first principles, you know.
Exactly.
And I think the libertarians do bring an important thing to politics, in that often they have like a very thought out like philosophical idea of like what a good, you know.
Yeah, I actually don't find them as well thought out. I find them as very practical. Like I think we need right now a way more decentralized government, and I would like them to advocate for that merely on practical basis. Once libertarians start getting ideological, they get more and more utopian, and I actually don't think their philosophy is well grounded.
Okay, yeah.
But if they just want to show up and say, hey, maybe we let the states make more of these decisions, maybe we let the counties and the cities make more of these decisions and take away some power from the feds, or if they say, hey, look, how about you keep a little bit more of your income and shape the world with that, as opposed to letting, you know, a centralized power that seems to be corrupt shape the world? I'm like, yeah. And that works pretty well too.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't need a new moral system based on liberty to believe in any of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think like a lot of Catholics that are quibbling about these little things do have like a good like theological, philosophical first principles that are like valuable and that the world needs. But when you argue about the minutia, like it's like first principles, you cheapen, you know.
Right. And so what is the minutia that we're nerding out on? We're nerding out on things like
liturgical stuff, Vatican politics,
the hem length of skirts.
Yes, I heard that is a thing.
Recent scandal.
Recent scandal. Young Catholic men arguing about appropriate hem length of skirts, and this is PSA that makes you creepy and not good marriage material. But
public service announcement that makes you creepy. Yeah, it's also like, when are the young men going to issue a PSA on the length of skirts? Won't that be valuable? Can't wait.
Yeah.
You know. Or Vatican politics is something people nerd out on that's like not useful, not good for promoting Christ in the world.
It's also, I think it's like thing that's interesting is you have to do these things behind closed doors. If you want to argue about Vatican politics, you have to do it behind closed doors because it is so scandalous. Like, not because they're scandal, but it's like just scandalous that you care when the church is so much more,
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's like there's like the little bits of infighting about some of these things. I think they are scandalous to people that are on the outside of it, And,
well, they 100% are, but a lot of people who are doing that don't care about bringing Christ to those people. They just care about winning this little thing because they've become convinced that this minutia within the church is what everything's hinging on.
Yeah.
And that's the geeking out. That's the nerding out. That's the like that make you feel good about this. This is not the great challenge of Christ to the world.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting overall that Dave Smith's like, I've got two jobs.
Yeah.
Keep my crew from becoming too nerdy and red pill the world. And I'm like thinking that sounds like should be our attitude too.
Yeah.
A little bit different principles we're advocating for, but same problem.
Yeah.
And I also find this interesting. Like I heard somebody recently say, well, there's a lot of energy among, I think they're called integralist Catholics. And I go, what is that? And they go, well, they believe that like there should be a Catholic monarchy and Catholicism and the state should be one. And I'm like, there's a lot of energy around that.
Yeah, I think we're almost there, guys.
Like, do you think that discussion is very relevant at the moment? Like, like, all right. Do you think that discussion was something Jesus was emphasizing a lot? Anyway, but that's how we get off track. So let's go to our next thing, which is absurdism and gaslighting. So I want to bring this up in the context of, I really think that we need to talk more and more about what life was like in communist regimes, because I think it's so unimaginable right now. And there's so many lessons to be learned from it. And one of the things that was happening in like every communist regime is there would be some like falsehood, some statement that was false that contradicted everything you knew, like your daily reality. Like they would say, we're a prosperous country leading the wave of, industry and the worker rebellion while you're in a famine. Yeah. And if you ever pointed out the problem with the absurdism, you were sent off to the gulag or to
you were an enemy
the
of
Cultural
the
Revolution,
party,
enemy of the state. Yes. You didn't have the right think. And there was a purposefulness behind this. Like they actually were trying to break people's reasoning ability. Yeah. Right. And strange enough, it almost is like we have that right now, just in the Western world, even though they don't have the gulags behind it. And we need to be brave enough that whenever we're told something completely absurd, we can just be like, no. Right.
Yeah.
And there's these different little chinks in the armor we're seeing that this is all part of like what makes me think we're past peak on this stuff,
Yeah.
A great recent article that a dad in Ecuador changes gender identity in a desperate bid to win custody of his kids.
Yeah.
This is great. This dude is like completely like dresses like a normal, straight dude.
Yeah.
And he's just saying he's a woman and a mother in court because he will get more favorable treatment in custody of his kids. And go for it, man. Like use it,
Yeah.
And this is very similar that you and I have been talking about this for years now, that they'll keep discovering these people who are fake black in academia.
Right. Oh my gosh. And like a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of them. There was one that was funny because it was in DC. The woman was faking like a GW or something. And she was from KC.
There were two fakers at GW. Yeah. And she was from KC. Yeah.
She was ethnically Jewish from Kansas City, pretending to be black at GW.
She had kind of different iterations of her race expression at various times, but most recently she was Afro-Caribbean.
Right. And then there's a lot of people who honestly, my family, we thought we had Native American blood, and it took some people doing some research to be like, nope.
As much as Elizabeth Warren or.
Yeah. Well, we probably thought so. But we've disproven that. So,
yeah.
Another thing that was kind of crazy, kind of gaslighting is I got this like email yesterday from the public school district, like the inner city public school district.
Yeah.
And I'm on this email list and I don't know why I'm on it. And I also never open it because my kids don't go to public school. But like this one said, message from the interim superintendent. And I thought, that sounds important.
Yeah.
What happened to the last superintendent that we have an interim superintendent? And so I opened the email and there's a huge banner that says that this school district denies racism in all its forms, individual and systemic and blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's actually, it's just a banner. It's not like even like a little article. It's just like, that's the message in a banner. Right.
That it rejects racism. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of like chuckled because I was like, the superintendent had to come up and say this, like, what's going on? You know, like, I was like, this is so 2020. Like, why in 2023 are you doing this? Like, what's going on here? Right. And then I started reflecting, like, I mean, the most systematically racist organization in our society is inner city public schools.
Yeah.
Right. And they're the ones who are making the announcements about how they're against it. Right.
Yeah.
And let me back that up. We have, since the 70s, had terrible inner city public schooling almost across the board in America, everywhere. Yeah. And in most of these cities, it has not reformed, not gotten any better, right? Yeah. That means generations of children are going through this, being sentenced back to poverty.
Yeah.
Mostly minorities, or at least a lot minorities.
Yeah.
While other people are escaping to the burbs and finding other public school districts who actually give a good education. And they're doing this while endangering the children because they're more dangerous schools than anywhere else. They're not able to safeguard the kids physically. Yeah. And they are preventing public charter schools and private schools from trying to address the problem. Yeah. While spending, I know in the sense of Catholic versus public in this inner city school district, they're spending 3 times the amount per student.
Wow.
Right. While giving less of a product, endangering the kids. And opposing anyone who wants to do it for cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's, if there's a good case for systemic racism, this is a better case than the police force right here. You know? Yeah. But you know what? They send me my banner and you gotta, they run up the flagpole and you gotta salute it.
Now you know.
Now you know. But I think it's just gotta be like, I think the wool is more and more pulled off this, right? And more people are finding the ability to say no, that something's a lie here and something's absurd here. Yeah. And finding like that life goes on, even if you have some people condemn you for saying that.
Right.
And that's kind of the beauty of our system is that we're not sending people to the gulags. And when you're getting gaslit, you do need to oppose it and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. I think maybe in academia, that might not be totally true. I
don't know. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of academics who made a lot more money after they got canceled. I mean, we've been trying to get canceled with this podcast so we can be famous like them.
Ooh,
I'm kidding.
Yeah, they get canceled and they have to leave their job, right? But
they seem to do well after they leave, I mean, there's got to be some that didn't do well, but all the ones I know of seem to have done quite well. There's far more people who realize this is absurd than you're led to believe.
That's the thing. I think that we should feel like we do have that freedom, A, because there's no gulag, but B, also it's like that the numbers kind of probably would back you up.
And it's starting to reverse in the sense of like, I had to buy a pair of glasses, first glasses I bought in 20 years.
Yeah.
Because I refused to wear glasses, but my eyesight's getting worse. I had to go buy a pair of glasses. So I walk into the Warby Parker store. They actually have a physical store where I'm at.
Okay.
And they have no glasses for men. They only have non-binary glasses. So I tried to play along a little bit, but I couldn't find any glasses I liked was one problem. But the other problem is I feel bad and I feel like they're trying to educate me on my sexuality.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hand them $150 or $100 or even $50 for glasses.
Yeah.
When I don't want to be there and I feel bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to go. So then you're like looking for like the MAGA glasses store or the Black Rifle Glasses Company that will have men's glasses. I'm just kidding with that. But anyway, I did.
Yeah.
Just a local shop in my hometown in Iowa, but I got to get on this Black Rifle eyeglass company stuff.
I did find something where I could find some men's glasses. So, but I think I think there already has been a big backlash of that. I think we're kind of late to the scene with that. But still, when I tell people that I think we're past peak on this, people are surprised.
Yeah, I think we're past peak too, but I do think there were large areas where like damage was done, like police forces I think are declining everywhere, you know.
Crime rising while police recruiting is suffering.
and there's like the lie that the inner city doesn't need police.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think damage has been done, and even if we reach the peak, we're going to be seeing the damage for a while.
Yeah, I think so too. And a lot of the damage is happening through sexuality and the way we're teaching kids about it.
Yeah.
Right? And we're at the point now where what we're teaching kids as mainstream kind of Western ideas of sexuality, we are making misogynists look rational.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy.
We're like mainstream Islamic countries. I'm not talking about Afghanistan, but just ones that like have different gender roles and, you know, ones that as a Catholic, I don't believe in. I don't think their gender roles are correct, but it is more based in reality than what we're telling our kids right now. Yeah. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I mean, we're making bad things look correct.
Yeah. And I think like why do the Andrew Tates of the world have a captive audience, you know?
Right.
And yeah, because we're making bad things look correct. And he's not correct.
Why is even Andrew Tate famous? You know, I don't think he would have been famous 20 years ago. He's famous because of this weird vacuum that's been created.
Yeah, and it's like he understands like a couple things. Like he understands men and women and how they get along, right?
Well, he understands a couple aspects we're in denial of. I mean, I don't think he has any deep understanding of it, but he's willing to say some things that people want to deny.
He like has an understanding of the obvious things about men and women, right? And I think he's also has a message. It's like we're also telling this big lie right now. There's no difference between men and women, but also, despite that, men are the scum of the earth, you know, and the cause of our problems. And he's giving a counter narrative to those two very harmful ideas that disempower men, you know, and it's a crappy counter narrative.
And then we're letting white men become women, dominate women's spaces, while celebrating that they're women. And it's great. Like, it's just the most absurd thing, you know? Yeah. I mean, when I see stuff like this, particularly because we're not like in a Soviet Union or communist China back before, you know, the opening of China situation, I actually like seeing it because I think these absurd moments, like the guy in Nicaragua changing his gender identity, Ecuador, just for the sake of a, you know, custody suit. I think you want more of that. I think that's chinks in the armor. I think that's the beginning of the end type things. You know, it shows that they're just pointing out the contradictions.
I hope so. But as you pointed out, the public schools have an amazing ability to hold on to bad ideas. So
they have a great dedication to it. Like as a missionary or as a Catholic, you should almost be inspired by how some people in kind of like low paying jobs, not really improving their lives, will keep pushing a progressive agenda. Yeah. You know, it's like unbelievable. You know, there's an army of it, you know? Yeah. And in a way, I want to say this is the way I feel like the world is shaping up. In the middle are the Republicans and Democrats, you know, pushing kind of what they've always pushed. And they're not that different. Right. Yeah. But to the left of the Democrats, there's this group that you sometimes call the Squad or whatever, the progressives. Right. Yeah. I don't understand how much of that's fake and real. I don't think it's that big, and I don't think it'll be powerful, even though it's at pretty peak power right now. I kind of think even some of the people in that group don't believe what they're saying while they say it. It's just a power play. But then when you go to the Republicans and go to the right of that, there's all these dissident right groups. And in that are bad groups. There's racists, there's misogynists, there's whatever. But there's also really great people there too. But it's like they've all somehow realized there's a big lie happening. Yeah. You know, and some of them became like the misogynists are sometimes referred to as the pickup artists. There's like literally a group of people who on the right called the pickup artists. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, when did that shift?
How did that become a political, like, I don't know what you call it, node in like American thought, you know?
Yeah.
But it became a political node because our idea of sexuality got so nuts that some people just opted to, you know, join Andrew Tate. You know? So none of this is, I mean, this is kind of good in the sense of like things are a changing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it also means like, I mean, Catholicism, we need to somehow live it and like be getting our message out to all these
I
groups.
think the two sort of polar ends are like, I think they grew a lot in the last, you know, however many years. And I think that does point to like a vacuum, right? And it's if we're not giving people like the true narrative, you know, the true thing, there's going to be a lot of bad counter narratives, you know.
Right. Well, I think that when you're experimenting, trying to find something all new, you're going to have a lot of wrong ideas, you know, and I do think we're on the cusp in the next 20 years of a great transition, you know, and I don't know how quick it's going to happen. And I don't know what's going to win. And I hope what wins is more Catholic than what we have. Right. But like, I think it's going to be as big a deal as the transition from modernism to postmodernism that we all look at historically. Yeah. And I think if you're awake, you're not looking, I just said awake, like woke, but I mean, if you're paying attention, you're not going to be obsessed with all these historical changes in worldview. I think Americans are bad thinking about worldview and history of thought. Yeah. We don't talk about it that much. We don't hear the term a lot. Other cultures, I think particularly Germans, talk about it more. Pope Benedict talked about it all the time. Like Pope Benedict was like a historian of thought, also in the moment. Yeah. You know, and I think that we're at a great moment in the history of thought and like the vibe shift or whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens and pray and work for, you know, that God is a bigger part of the next worldview that we're kind of coming up to. All right. Yeah. Got anything to add to that, or should we go to our simple living product reviews?
I think that was a good wrap up of that.
All right. First off, ice cream snobbery. I love Bluebell ice cream. It's sold in a true half gallon, and you'll notice that all those other things are not true half gallons. By the way, wake up to that. Read your portions. Yeah. All right. Ice cream is almost, the price of ice cream seems to be almost completely driven by how much cream is in it. Yeah. Just so you know. So higher cream content, it's more expensive. The real cheap ice creams are mostly air, very low cream. Yeah. And that's that.
Air and water. Yeah.
If you like good ice cream, I highly recommend making your own ice cream, and you can reach out and I'll send you a good base recipe for this. We've been doing this for the last 6 months. So when you're going to make your own ice cream, don't go with one of these like newfangled Cuisinart things, you know, be a traditionalist. You need a bucket of ice and a canister in the middle. And if you were to buy this new, there's a lot of people out there who buy these new. Which is surprising because I honestly don't meet them, it feels like. But like there's 3 or 4 companies still making these things new. One of the best ones is an Amish company called Emmergood. And I have the most space age one too. It's hand crank, but it's kind of space age-ish in the way they've insulated the bucket. Yeah. It's $400 for a hand crank, for a bucket that holds ice that you put a canister in and turn a crank. $400 is the price, right?
Where did you get yours? It's not from the Amish company.
I don't have that money. I'm not a baller like that, right? So my hand crank ice cream makers are 90 years old. Wow. The brand you want is White Mountain. Okay. And the reason why this is special is this is a big family hack. You get your kids churning this ice cream. You just mix it up, you throw it in there, give them ice. Every once in a while you walk out there, pack more ice, so some more ice. And it takes them about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how good you are with the ice and salt. And they'll be cranking this, right? And it tastes so much better than anything store-bought. Yeah. We have a pistachio right now that's to die for. But the reason why it tastes better, do you know what the secret ingredient is, Laura?
Your kids are tired afterwards?
That's helpful. They appreciate dessert more afterwards.
Eggs.
No.
What's the secret ingredient?
My ice cream actually has no eggs.
Oh,
My
I
ice
like
cream is
it
almost
with
all
ice.
heavy cream, whole milk,
Oh,
and some sugar.
I like
That's the
a
whole thing.
custardy ice cream. All right.
Oh,
What's
you need
the
to
secret?
try it. You haven't tried mine.
Oh, you haven't tried the custard I've made, so here we are.
Well, okay. All right. No, but you don't have the special ingredient. The tears of children. Everything tastes better with the tears of children.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So you have to run your own
Very
little
good.
ice cream gulag. In the winter, we're running it in our basement. And they make excellent ice cream. So White Mountain, get as old a one as you can. I found that the green buckets are the highest quality. It's white. I think it's white pine. It's what these buckets are made of.
Okay.
But you want the green buckets, not the brown buckets. And if you do need a motor because you don't have kids, maybe you're a priest or have some other reason, get the yellow motor from White Mountain. That's the way to go.
Okay.
And they come in 1 gallon or 4 quart, 6 quart, and 20 quart. 20 quart, you need an engine.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
All right. Feedback, as always, is very appreciated. This is Simple House's 20th anniversary year, 2023. Look for save the dates and look for information on our website. We're inviting everyone to a party in DC and a party in KC. Laura, do you have anything to add?
I don't know. Contact us if you want to know more, too.
All right. God bless.
All right. All right.
See you later, Laura.
All right. Bye, Clark.